6:15. I hate to start without a complete group here, but in all fairness, we did post this for 5 p.m. and originally it was for the mobile command center that is out front, and giving folks an opportunity to tour that and see this new tremendous asset that's already been put to good use here in the last couple of days. So hopefully everybody got a chance to look through there and in awe and see what it is capable of doing. It is an excellent resource for us in northern Cass County. We're excited that we've got people that had the foresight to plan for this, so we do appreciate it. So we've already, any questions about the mobile command center while we have the chief here before we move into the next item?
And I will say, sir, that Ryan gave me a cheat sheet
Okay.
about the command center, but I just want to echo, what you said. I couldn't have been prouder to deploy the bus yesterday and represent Raymore there, because the folks that were there were so appreciative that we were there, and they were able to utilize the vehicle, for the entire duration of the event. So we were well represented there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And then because of that event, I would like to go ahead and offer up about a 30-second moment of silence on behalf of firefighter McCormick and his family, and the tragic loss that occurred there and the sacrifices made by their fire agency, West Peculiar Fire. Thank you. So the next item on our agenda tonight is the animal licensing program, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. As you know, currently City Code calls for our animal licensing program with associated charges that are incurred by the citizens when they come in to get a dog or a cat license at the window here. As the council knows, we've grown considerably since 2000, but that particular source of revenue, in spite of the fact that we know that there are more dogs and cats in the city of Raymore, since we've doubled in size, that source of revenue is actually going down with the same amount charged for each license. From a high of about $7,500 to, I would predict, we will be lucky to collect $4,000 this year. To that end, we are considering, we are going to be making a recommendation to the City Council that for the 2021 budget, and we want to get a jump on it now, for the 2021 budget, we eliminate that source of revenue and put our money marbles and chalk into a different direction for our efforts. The overlying consideration being the point of the license is to get people in here and get them getting their pets vaccinated, and they have to provide proof of that vaccination. Is there a better way to do that? Chief has been dealing with our animal control officers. As you know, those folks are phenomenal and are always coming up with new and innovative ideas for that program. So I'm going to turn it over to the chief to talk about some of that and then go into some details of the recommendation that we would be making to you all.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, and it amazes me how he knows those numbers without knowing those numbers. We were at a high of $7,977, so almost $8,000 in 2012, and an all-time low last year in 2019 of $4,500. And with the increase in population, the increase in pets, we know that there are folks out there not getting their pets licensed. One of the things in all of my frequent conversations, because I'm an animal lover, and so I take great interest in the operation of the animal shelter and all of the wonderful things that our folks do out there, and they are forever, as Mr. Fearborn indicated, coming up with new and innovative ideas to make that shelter operate at peak efficiency. With little money, sometimes they get donations of cat litter, they get donations of pet beds and towels and all sorts of things that the wonderful people in our community come to us to make sure that the animals are well taken care of in our community without the revenue from animal licenses. So just a couple of things as we have looked at this issue, over the course of time, and then, I'm anxious and happy to answer any questions that you all have. But one of the things that I did want to point out was something that the animal control officers had said to me. It's the good pet owners, the ones who actually license their pets, and that's only $5. It's $5 to license your pet. Those are not the people who let their animals run at large. They're not the people who, we don't interact with those folks. So, it's the people who are avoiding the licensing are the people who are the ones violating the law. And they have done, our animal control folks have done a number of things to try and make that easy. You all know or are familiar with our vaccination clinics that we've had up at Foxwood Springs, and we did over at Centerview, where we were giving a brightly colored card to the Raymore residents, so we would be able to pick them out of line and say, once you get your vaccination, come over here. We're going to license you right here on the spot. You've taken the trouble to come here and have your pet vaccinated, and we're going to make it really easy. Go over here and pay your $5 and catch them ducking out of line to avoid the pet license. I mean, it's $5. So let me just talk for a minute about some of the things that we've talked about. The reasons for, and there have been a number of us that have met to discuss these issues, over the course of months, not to, finance, animal control, obviously the police department, a number of us, Mike Eakey, all of us, to make sure that, we're looking at this problem from all different angles. And what are the reasons that people are not licensing their pet? We looked at all sorts of technology issues, because you can actually go online and you can print off the form, but you can't license and pay the fee online. So we looked at, could we make that easier? And when we start looking at benefit versus cost, and we look at some really fancy technology program in order to get people to pay $5, it just seemed kind of like wasn't worth the money. And one of the things that the ladies, and I include myself in that group of older citizens who don't understand things sometimes once they're explained to them. But, one of the things that our animal control officers have said is that people don't understand, a lot of the people that they come in contact with don't understand the concept of a city license, because what they say is, well, I got my rabies shot, I've got my rabies tag, my animal's wearing the rabies tag, why do I need to go get this as what does this get me? Because I've already got my rabies. And one of the things that you will read, if you do any research about, pet licensing versus not, pros and cons, and they talk about, the safety of the pet and being able to return the pet to its rightful owner, we can find that out from a rabies tag. It's very easy to go back to the veterinarian that vaccinated that animal and find out where the animal belongs. Microchipping also is something that we highly recommend and that we do at the vaccination clinics, so that, because a lot of times what our ladies run into is that an animal that is legitimately licensed in the city of Raymore, the collar or the tag may have been ripped off when it was escaping from its enclosure, all sorts of things that might come into play that would mean that they were legitimately licensed but didn't have the tag on at the time, that they brought them in. And again, we're able to ascertain that information from the rabies vaccination anyway. And as Mr. Fearborn and I have had numerous conversations about this, if any of y'all ever lived in Kansas City, it's like the city sticker. Nobody ever really understood why they needed a city sticker either. And so, as our ladies have tried to explain that, well, and of course it's especially confusing for folks, and again, our elderly folks. It's especially confusing because, well, I got my rabies shot in July, and now you're telling me I have to get, my city license in January, and then I need another rabies shot. So it's very confusing to people. And so we looked at all sorts of ways could we do, other jurisdictions do multiple year licenses? Could we do a 3-year or 5-year license? All sorts of ways, to make it easier for our citizens. But the reality truly is that our folks spend a really significant amount of their time entering the license information, because obviously, the information doesn't do you any good at all if you can't access it easily to be able to return a pet to its rightful owner. So, we computerize that information, and that takes a lot of time. And I think, as Mr. Feuerborn indicated, our time is much better spent being proactive, being out into the community and education, which they do an excellent job at that with young people, but also to be out there and talking to pet owners about leaving an animal out in the elements, and all sorts of things that they could be much more proactive at. I think it's important, and we did a lot of research of other area cities' fees and procedures, but I think it's important to talk about the change in sort of the way that we do business that has occurred since we began taking animal license fees. And one of the big changes is the foundation. And the money that has been brought in support of the animal shelter. And again, I can't say enough about the awesome people in our community, our citizens, who will come forward. All my ladies have to do is put something on Facebook, and we have people volunteering all kinds of crazy things. We had an animal that needed to be driven across the state to have a hip repair, and we had probably 25 citizens in Raymore who wanted to drive that dog across the state of Missouri. And so, I know you can't always rely on the goodwill of folks, but they step up time and time and time again. And that is evidenced by the money that has come in, through donations both to the foundation and also donations directly to the city of Raymore, just for the animal shelter alone. But it's important to talk about, too, and I mentioned it earlier, about those in-kind donations that we get. And I ask the ladies to try and quantify that, because when you're looking at losing a revenue source, which I know really makes Mr. Feuerborn's hair stand on end, but you're looking at losing that revenue, it's important to at least show the other side of that picture, that we're not spending money on litter, and we're not spending money on food or dog beds, or all of the things that people donate to us really frequently. And so I ask the ladies to just put together some numbers for me for in-kind donations, not just the money that's being put in the bank, but for the in-kind donations. And it was in the neighborhood of over $25,000 in the things that we are getting. Again, a ton of litter at a time, and all of this, animal food and things like that. The current fiscal year foundation donations are approaching $6,000 to the foundation. Also, in the current animal control escrow account, there's about $5,600. We have purchased for animal control a new washer and dryer, because we do the laundry of the animal beds and things like that. We bought new cat cages out there. We are able to do a lot of things, again, through those donations, and not money that is budgeted, not money that I have to put in my budget submission to Mr. Feuerborn at the start of the fiscal year, but things that we are able to do because of the donations of folks coming in to us. And I think something else that's really important as well, that we previously, when I first came here in 2012, we virtually did no enforcement. And some of these animals grew old in our shelter and were not adoptable, and were being shipped off to places like Wayside Waifs and all that. But we have a very active adoption program, and we have a a program now that previously did not exist with organizations like the Casey Pet Project and others to get those animals placed. And so, we are moving the animals out, and that, again, is with the support of the community. But also what that's allowed us to do is be very active in enforcement now. And so, prior to 2013, before Jamie Hassenjager came and then Bailey came the year after that, we had written virtually no tickets in 2012, when I first came here. And now, running at large violations, we've generated almost 5,200. That would have been really nice if it was 52,000. $5,200, but license violations, public nuisance violations, animal neglect, and animal abuse. And those have all been written since our 2 new animal control folks have been here. So, to say that, my focus is on the enforcement aspect and getting people to treat their pets right is, I think, the most important thing that we do, even absent a license violation, which is not the most significant things that people are doing to their pets. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that was a lot of information. I do have some surrounding jurisdictions here, too, that have done away with pet licensing, but I think that, our feeling out there is that, our focus needs to be elsewhere.
So if we did away with the city license, still code is that people that have animals would have to have them have the rabies,
Yes, sir.
and if they didn't,
We cite them for that.
okay, thank you.
The portion of code, sir, that would change is the portion that discusses the fact that you have to have a license.
Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for excellent presentation tonight on this. Kind of off topic a little bit, but still in the realm of animal licensing. On our CIP, we have, a dog park. Granted, licensing wasn't going to fund that, because I think that was almost $250,000 proposed. How does this suggestion, recommendation kind of impact, and what's the future plans for, how the dog park, kind of envision funding that?
Well, I will let Mr. Feuerberg talk about the funding of that. The dog park and licensing of dogs that would go to the dog park was actually somewhat problematic for us because, what we were saying from an animal control standpoint, would we need to be at the dog park all the time to make sure that people coming and going actually had a Raymore animal license in order to come into the park. Doing away with the animal license, we could still spot check for the rabies tags, but it would actually make it easier for us.
And the signage that was going to be associated with the dog park in the end was actually going to be just that. It points to the fact that you have to make sure that the pet is vaccinated before you bring them in. That would be the violation.
Okay.
That would be associated with it.
Okay. So no literal connection to licensing. But
And certainly no connection to the budget or the funding.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Funding source is different through Parks and Recreation.
Yes, that's what I assumed, but there's always been this connection of return on investment, with respect to the amount of, especially looking at the numbers over the, this 7-year period, and how they're declining, but we have this expensive, park amenity. There's no revenue from that, so thank you.
Yes, Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, we go back, I think you mentioned, how will we regulate vaccinations? Dogs are coming in, they must be vaccinated. We have a sign. But how would we regulate that for the people bringing them in?
The fact of the matter is, what we know is requiring a Raymore City license isn't regulating it. And we also know, and this is perhaps a little counterintuitive, I think I'm using the correct term for this, the more we're saying you need to come in and get a Raymore license and prove up the vaccination may very well be keeping people from going and getting a vaccination. Instead, what we would prefer to do is increase vaccination events where we didn't require people to then step across to a line and get a city tag and pay the $5. Say that with my back to the camera. Because they literally skip the line or don't show up for the event because they know that that's going to occur. So one of the ACO's suggestions is get rid of the need for the city tag, but let us increase the number of vaccination events that we have where we're advertising there's no more city license that's required at this. Just come and get your pet vaccinated. One of the other things that we really want to do is get over the stigma of my pet never leaves the house, so it doesn't need to be vaccinated. That has been problematic for us in the past, will continue to be, but that's one of the areas that I know that they want to target. It's bad enough that you will see in the next Raymore Review, we actually have an article that's a did you know you had to get your pet vaccinated, but I have no hope that even that article in the Raymore Review is going to see an increase in we put it in there specifically because we're seeing the problem manifest itself already, that folks just aren't coming in to get that license.
And that has happened repeatedly. I had asked the girls, I said, I know the Raymore Review is about to come out. And they said, oh, this is like the fourth year of it being, because it's this time of year that people need to get, their pets licensed. And so, citizen education, I have relied, on Melissa and Mike, to put out as much information all the time. At the end of in the fall, January's coming up, you need to get your pets licensed, and they do it all the time. And again, revenue continues to decline.
So, can I ask you a question real quick? So I would be remiss if I didn't ask, because local veterinarians have chewed on my ear a couple of times about us holding these events, and which is directly competitive with their vaccinations that they offer as part of their treatment. How do we work in relationship with those local vets? If we're going to increase the number of our vaccination events, how do we work with our local vets for them to be part of that process?
We have reached out to, and I've had a number of conversations with the individual that you're referring to, reached out to our local vets and said, come and be a part of it, and come and put your literature, because obviously, a vaccination of an animal is a very small part of the veterinary care that your pet needs. When an animal gets sick for, any reason, you need a local vet, and we have ask those folks to participate with us in those clinics as well. So, I would encourage, our local vets to, come and take part, in those. And we place their literature out. We put, advertising basically, for their veterinary services, when we do a clinic.
Okay. Sonia?
Thank you. Probably the biggest complaint, other than animals running at large, that I hear as a council member is people saying, my neighbor has so many pets. And I know this would probably just be a guess, but maybe you have some real info. How often do you think it is that people aren't getting licenses because they think that's the city keeping track of how many pets they have? And or do you think having pets licensed helps inform people about the rules, about the number of pets that they have?
Well, I'll go back to, let me say first that I think that you're correct. I think that, those people who are in violation, they think, I'm going to come in here, I'm certainly not going to get licenses for 8 dogs because I'm in violation. I'm in violation of the law. But as the ladies have pointed out to me repeatedly, those individuals who will get a license, they're the good pet owners. They're the ones whose dogs don't run at large. They have the proper number of pets. So those people who are going to break the law as far as a license is concerned, they're breaking the law in all those other ways as well. And so, I wouldn't have any hard numbers, but I know that Jamie and Bailey both, they know the frequent flyers out there that we see all the time whose dogs are always running loose and who have, lots of animals. And they're very diligent about, if an animal is out in a cage in the backyard and it's 100 degrees and there's no water and all that, they absolutely, these cases of animal neglect that they've, put through our court system, is evidence of the fact that they are out there proactively looking for, people treating their animals well. And again, the good pet owners are the ones who get the licenses and obey all the other laws as well.
Yeah, I just had a question, and you know, I'm in support of this. I think what I'm hearing is that city license has become a dinosaur, and there's other avenues to kind of take its place. But I was just curious, you know, we've got a year before it kicks in. Would there be a way that the people, you know, if they had a pet, they got their rabies shot, and this would be self-driven by by our residents, they could go online and register their own pet, picture their pet, their license number and all that, which would be a no charge fee, just to have a database. So if that pet was lost or ended up in just a quicker way of getting back to the owner. Has there been any thought in that, animal control?
We did look at the technology, and we looked at it from the perspective of you know, licensing, and believe it or not, there are actually companies out there, national companies out there that will do pet licensing for you. Of course, they want to charge you exorbitant fees and all, but you know, we have gone a long way. The ladies both have, and both of them, you know, understand technology way more than I do. But you know, as far as and Raymore is hometown enough that, you know, if you had Jamie and Bailey, you know, sitting here, they could tell you, you know, what kind of dog Mrs. Smith has. You know, they know. But I think, and a lot of the discussion that we had, and especially when we talk about public education, because if this happens to be something that we do in the coming fiscal year, public education is going to be really important, because we want people to understand that this doesn't let you off the hook for taking care of your animal with the proper vaccinations and all of those things. But I think any technology that would make it easier for the ladies to do their job, they would welcome with open arms.
Chief, do they allow, is our Facebook page for animal control, do they allow people to post missing?
They do. They
That's
do.
on there.
And we even, actually, we will forward if we get one from someplace else. So even if it's another jurisdiction in the area. But yeah, we let our residents post missing pets, and we put them up on our Facebook page all the time.
Do you have something else, Jim?
Thank you, sir. So what staff would be checking the council's temperature on is in a mere 6 months from now, when we're hot and heavy into the next budget, proposing to the council that there be an amendment to code to remove the requirement to get the license. There be an amendment to the fee schedule, which is the license. That there be an amendment, obviously, to the revenue component for 2021 that removes this revenue entirely. You'd still see it there because by audit rules, we have to show it for 5 years, but so it would be listed until such time as it dropped off. And then to present you with a very aggressive communications and marketing program, and perhaps a budget amendment for some technology, registration technology that wouldn't require any sort of a fee, but where people could voluntarily go online and put their pet on there. And just looking for your temperature on providing you with all of that for 2021. And it is
Yes to
pretty
all
hard.
of the above.
And it is pretty hard to believe we're 6 months out. And CIP committee was hot and heavy at it already today at 1. Great. Just for the fun of it, and because maybe we got a couple of minutes, would you mind telling on yourself relative to your mother
My mother?
and pet donations?
Oh, God. Yeah. Has anybody here met my mother besides Mr. Fearborn? I know you have. She lives in Raytown. She lives in Raytown. So I call her at bedtime. I call her at bedtime every night, and she said, she's 92. And she said, I want to donate some money. She said, I want to do an ongoing donation to the Raymore Animal Shelter. Okay, okay. She said, well, how do I do that? Because she doesn't do anything electronically. So, she writes a check, and so she doesn't even use a debit card. And she said, so if I wrote a check and I sent it out there, how do I know somebody wouldn't steal it and spend it on themselves? I said, well, because we're honest, first of all. And I said, and I work there and I could take your check in. I'm on all of her accounts. I said, if I wanted to steal your money, I could have stolen it a long time ago. But yeah, she was very concerned that somebody might take her checks and because she wants to do a regular recurring donation to the Raymore Animal Shelter, and was worried that somebody might take her check. I said, nobody's going to run off to Mexico on your $100, so I don't think you have to worry about that. But yeah, she.
And of course, she
Yeah, get her
indicated to the
receipt.
chief that she knows both of our ACOs
Oh, yeah.
and trusts them entirely. So there's only one person left in this particular equation
I
that might.
said, who's iffy in this whole equation? I guess apparently because she knows Jamie and Bailey and she trusts them, so I'm the one who can't be trusted in this whole thing. So yes, I can't be trusted to get her check here safely. So
That concludes staff reports tonight, sir.
Any additional questions before we move on? Anybody have anything under other that they'd like to bring up? Mr. Ullman?
Just something for thought. I was going to mention to Mr. Fearborn and the chief. We passed the Tobacco 21 initiatives here a while back, and I got an interesting question from a clerk at a convenience store not in our city but very nearby in a neighboring city, and he said, you were law enforcement? And I said, yes. And he says, what do we do about, he says, the age to buy tobacco and vaping products has risen to 21 in this neighboring city as well. He says, what about, people buying that? I said, well, for example, in our city, we're targeting the sellers and not, minors in possession, therefore. He goes, no, I'm talking about people who are 21 legally purchasing the product and the minor being right next to them and them transferring the product. I said, well, that's a new one. He says that's become somewhat prevalent here, and it's a concern. I don't know if we have the same concerns with our businesses, but just something I thought that I might share that had been brought up. Again, it was not in our city, but, and Joe may have, obviously he's kind of shaking his head. Maybe he's got some thoughts on this.
Sure. Chime in.
On it. I was just going to share that my son turned 18 on the 22nd of December, and he was like, I want to go smoke a cigar. You and I should go, get cigars. And so I said he needed to go to Belton to do it. And he told me the Belton store was closed, the only place he knew that I told him to go because he doesn't obviously know where liquor stores are. But at least as far as he, so we ended up having to go to a Raymore store, and I did buy the cigars because he couldn't. And but now it's federal law, right? So he had 8 days of legal tobacco, and we said we don't want you to smoke tobacco anyway. That was the whole point of this. Yeah. But it was kind of funny. I'm like, do you need your dad to come and buy some tobacco for you?
Well, didn't we used to tag people for aiding and abetting a minor?
I was going to say contributing, if you, alcohol or tobacco or, you buy it, you hand it to the minor, then I'm citing the person who buys it.
I would think the practical thing there too is just like the reason that we refer this more to the store than everything's got to be complaint driven on something like that. I mean, we can't have obviously the surveillance cameras in all these locations. So whoever is clerking there or the store manager would need to contact us. We would need to go out, or better yet, tell them reasonably, don't do that in front of me.
And again, this was not in our city, but nearby. But I told him that. I said, I think it would come much as if someone were buying alcohol and transferring possession to a minor in front of you. That's a clear violation, and you tell them, you can't do that here, or notify the police. A number of options. I found it interesting because it's really not something we talked about or considered during the Tobacco 21 initiative. And they told us that the research showed that it'd be about 3 years before that would flush itself out of the system, because the users, when they were first getting, especially vaping products, were getting them from people who were 18 and legal to buy them, and then transferring them to younger people. And I found it an interesting microcosm of the problem that we really didn't consider, even with the change to 21, of people buying it and transferring it to people of younger age. And I think the concern there was the boldness of, look, here's the 15-year-old, give me your cash and I'm going to transfer it. And this clerk was fairly young himself, but I didn't know if we'd had any issues with that.
That does bring it, because it's more along the lines of not contributing because we don't have the possession as being illegal as it was for alcohol. So possession is not yet illegal. It's only the sale of the product. So you could, I guess, legally, they probably can't do much about that. Can they?
Well, we
With regard to the-
have a contributing ordinance.
Right.
And so, and I would have to look at because there's all sorts of specific things under the contributing ordinance where you can contribute to the delinquency of a minor by doing, A, B, C, D, and E. And so I would have to see, if we were going to write somebody, how it would fit, under that. Not the possession of the tobacco, as much as, contributing to, to their delinquency, so. Hemp is the bigger issue.
That was
right
kind of
now.
my idea. It might warrant a review of our statute to make sure that we did have something in place should we get a complaint of that nature that were observed. Thank you.
Yeah, Tom?
Well, if I recall, that did come up. We were talking about that. We were going after the seller. But it's like if an officer driving down the street thought he saw a teenager with a beer, he's going to pull him over. But if he saw a teenager smoking a cigarette, would he do anything about it? Because, again, we were targeting the seller. So it kind of is a tough situation that the minor's walking with a cigarette pack.
Yeah, unlike liquor, though, I think under 18 or older is, you can legally possess it. That's the screwiness of the law. Yeah. It might actually change with the new federal law. Okay. Anything else? Okay, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.